Wehrmacht engineers took pride in their sloped armor, calculating ricochets and millimeters of protection. But they didn't account for what happens when a shell weighing nearly 100 pounds slams into their perfect machine. In this story, there is no room for beautiful maneuvers. Here, only the cruel mathematics of kinetic energy applies. We will tell you about a night duel, where a hit didn't just pierce armor, but tore multi-ton turrets off their rings like toy hats. You will hear about what happens to the crew inside a tank when an impact turns the air into a shockwave that leaves no chance for survival. But the price of such power is hell inside the self-propelled gun itself. Bleeding ears, hallucinations from carbon monoxide, and reloading a 100-pound weight when your muscles are already failing. Learn how one Zveroboy turned an elite platoon into a pile of burning scrap in 12 minutes, and what actually lies behind the dry lines of award citations. It is 3 a.m, July 1944. The Zolochiv district, western Ukraine. The forest here isn't just thick, it is dense as a wall. The air is stagnant, heavy, saturated with the moisture of the swamp and the smell of rotting pine needles, which not even the sharp stench of diesel fuel can overpower. In this darkness, you can't see your hand in front of your face. The world has shrunk to the size of the fighting compartment of the Su-152 self-propelled artillery mount. A second ago, the airwaves hissed with static, connecting the crew to the outside world, to the regiment, to life. Now, there is only a ringing in the ears and the smell of burnt wiring. A stray fragment from a mortar shell bursting somewhere in the treetops found its way. It passed tangentially through the open hatch, sheared off the antenna input, and turned the 10RT radio station into a pile of useless junk. Sparks showered onto the radio operator's oily coveralls, but he didn't even flinch. Fatigue dulls reflexes. "No connection." The radio man's voice sounds muffled, as if from under a pillow. "The station is done. We're deaf, Commander." Lieutenant Ignatiev slowly turns his head. In the dim light of the ceiling lamp, his face looks like a mask molded from gray clay and soot. He doesn't scream, doesn't pound his fist on the armor. Emotions here are an unaffordable luxury, a waste of calories. He simply states the fact. No connection means no fire correction, no orders, no help. They are alone in this God-forsaken forest. 4 men and 45.5 tons of metal. Around them lies the unknown. Where is the infantry guard? Did they pull back an hour ago or die in the ravine? Where is the German breakthrough that headquarters was screaming about this afternoon? No one knows. Night makes everyone equal. In the dark, there are no ranks or insignias. Only those who hunt and those who die. The driver mechanic, head hunched into his shoulders, looks into the vision block but sees only blackness. They cannot turn on the headlights. The first beam of light would be a ticket to the next world. The Su-152 is a blind machine. It has no rotating turret to look around. To aim the gun, you have to turn the entire hull, grinding the soil with the tracks. This is not a breakthrough tank. It is a self-propelled howitzer, a heavy hammer created to destroy concrete bunkers, not to play hide-and-seek with the Wehrmacht's maneuverable cats in a night forest. Ignatiev assesses the situation. His brain works coldly, cutting off fear. If they try to withdraw now, blindly, they will either get stuck in the swamp by driving off the log road or expose their rear to a strike. There is nowhere to retreat, and nothing to retreat on. The fuel in the tanks is barely enough for maneuvers, let alone a march. "Stop engine." Ignatiev's order sounds dry, like the click of a bolt. "Kill the motor." The 12-cylinder diesel, which had been roaring like a wounded beast, sneezes and goes quiet. silence falls. Not the blessed silence of the rear, where you can hear crickets, but the cottony, crushing silence of the front line, where every rustle can mean death. You can hear the metal cooling, armor plates 75 millimeters thick, heated by the engine and the July heat, click as they give off warmth to the night. You can hear the loader breathing heavily, trying to stretch his stiff back. They are standing on the only solid road in this sector, a corduroy road, a layer of logs laid across the swamp. To the right and left is a quagmire, impassable for vehicles. If the Germans come, they will come through here. There is simply no other way for their heavy Panthers. Ignatiev knows this, and the German commander, who is currently perhaps looking at a map by the light of a pocket flashlight a couple of kilometers away, also knows this. This is the geography of war. It dictates rules stricter than any manual. "Listen," whispers the lieutenant. "Everyone, listen." The crew freezes. Now they are not tankers. They are one giant auditory nerve. It is stuffy in the metal box. The ventilation was turned off along with the motor. The smell of gunpowder fumes, eaten into the upholstery over weeks of fighting, mixes with the sour smell of sweat from 4 men who haven't washed in a week. But no one pays attention to this. All senses are focused on the outside world. The darkness beyond the armor seems tangible. It presses on the eyes, forcing them to see phantoms, dancing shadows, flashes that aren't there. These are tricks of the mind, trying to compensate for the lack of visual information. But hearing is harder to fool. Ignatiev understands that their only chance is the first shot, a preemptive strike. Their gun, 152 millimeters, the ML-20 gun howitzer, possesses monstrous power. A shell weighing nearly 50 kilograms does not require sniper precision to hit vulnerable zones. The kinetic energy of such a slug is capable of tearing the turret off the ring of any existing tank simply due to mass and velocity. But they have no right to miss. Reloading the separate loading ammunition takes time, long, agonizing seconds, during which the enemy will have time to fire 3 return shells. A miss means death. Detection ahead of time means death. An attempt to flee means death. "Load armor-piercing," Ignatiev commands, barely audibly. Movement begins in the cramped space of the casemate. The loader, a stocky guy with hands like shovels, reaches for the ammo rack. The shell, 53 BR 540, weighs 48 and 8/10 kilograms. To lift such a weight in an awkward position, in semi-darkness, without hitting the breech or dropping it on a comrade's foot, is not just physical labor, it is acrobatics on the verge of muscle failure. The screech of metal on metal is heard, heavy breathing, then a dull clang. The shell has entered the breech. Next comes the casing with the propellant charge. The bolt closes with a characteristic oily clack. Now death slumbers in the barrel. Ignatiev presses against the panoramic sight, although he knows it is useless. The instrument scales barely glow with phosphorescent green light, but behind the glass of the vision block is a solid wall of ink. He will have to shoot by sound, by flash, by intuition. He must become part of this machine, fuse with it nervously. The forest is silent, but this is a deceptive silence. Somewhere out there, in the depths of the thicket, engines are growling. German Maybach engines work differently than Soviet diesels. They have a different timbre, higher, buzzing, gasoline-fueled. Ignatiev is waiting for this sound. He knows that Panthers feel like masters of the night. They have excellent Zeiss optics, they have commanders' cupolas, they have radio communication. They think the Russians are sitting deaf and blind, shaking with fear in their trenches. The Germans don't know one thing. Here, on the narrow log road, a Zveroboy awaits them, and it is not afraid. It has nothing to be afraid with. The machine has no emotions. There is only a caliber of 152 millimeters and an order to stand to the death. And for the people inside, fear burned out long ago, leaving behind only cold, calculating anger and heavy, leaden fatigue. Time stretches, turning into thick resin. Every minute of waiting pulls at the veins. The gunner's hands lie on the aiming flywheels, palms damp with sweat. He wipes them on his pants, puts them back on the cold metal. The main thing is not to twitch ahead of time. The main thing is to hold out. Isolation is total. No one will come to help. No one will cover the flank. The entire war right now, in this minute, has shrunk to the size of one forest clearing and 4 men locked in a steel box in the middle of a hostile night. Ignatiev closes his eyes so his hearing sharpens to the limit. He waits for the sound that will tear this silence apart, the sound of clanking tracks. Silence falls on their shoulders like a lead slab. The V2K engine is silent, and now the only sounds inside the armor are the raspy breathing of 4 men and the rare, gunshot-like crackling of the cooling manifold. The Su-152 is no longer a roaring beast. Now it is 45.5 tons of cold, dead metal merged with the landscape. Ignatiev signals with his hand. Open the hatches. A risk. A stray fragment could fly in at any second, but in a buttoned-up tank, you are blind and deaf. Vision blocks are useless at night. They are just pieces of glass looking into blackness, and they need ears. The hatches are thrown back with a clang. Moist night air bursts into the fighting compartment, displacing the smell of fumes and sweat, but it doesn't make things easier. The forest around lives its own incomprehensible, threatening life. The creak of a tree in the wind sounds like an infantryman's step. The rustle of a branch sounds like the movement of a bolt. The crew turns into one large, exposed nerve. Now they are not people. They are a living sonar tuned to a single frequency. The frequency of death. The mechanic driver Misha, sticking his head out of the hatch, squints, although there is nothing for his eyes to latch onto. He listens. His world is vibrations and tonalities. He can distinguish the operation of a diesel from a gasoline engine at 3 kilometers. He knows what the strain of a Tiger sounds like, and how the gearbox of a Panzer IV whines. But now, he is looking for something else. I hear it. The mechanic's whisper is like the rustle of dry leaves. They're coming. Everyone freezes. Even the heart seems to skip beats so as not to interfere with hearing. At first, it is just background, a barely perceptible change in air density, a low, vibrating hum that you feel not with your ears, but with your diaphragm. It builds slowly, rolling in waves. This is not our sound. Soviet tanks rattle, clang, their tracks knocking like hammers on an anvil. Here the sound is different. Even, viscous, metallic, but with a strange, almost melodic whistle. Panthers, the driver states confidently, without turning around. Tracks under tension, interleaved suspension, stepping softly, the bastards. The Germans are driving confidently, brazenly. They feel like masters of the situation. The night, the fog, the lack of resistance, it all plays into their hands. They believe in their night vision devices, in their optics, in their armor. For them, this forest is just an obstacle on the map that needs to be overcome on the way to Lvov. They are not sneaking. They are marching. The roar of Maybach motors becomes distinct. Notes of high-octane gasoline exhaust appear in it. Distance? Ignatiev's voice is dry, businesslike. No trembling. 1 kilometer, maybe less, the gunner answers, pressing the headset headphones to his ears, although the radio is dead. It's a habit. Wind is away from us, carrying the sound. Closer, the loader objects. He stands bent over, hugging the breach as if seeking protection from it. 800 meters. Hear how they're gassing on their eyes? They're passing the ravine. Arguing about distance in the dark is reading tea leaves, where the price is life. An error of 200 meters for the 152mm ML-20 gun howitzer, when firing direct fire, is not critical for height, but critical for time. Shoot early. You unmask the position, and 3 75mm barrels will cover you with a return volley. Shoot late. They will see you first and burn you at point-blank range. The Panther has a long-barreled gun. It stitches through the Zveroboy's front like cardboard. Ignatiev closes his eyes. He tries to build a 3D model of the situation in his head, relying only on sound. The hum of engines breaks down into 3 separate sources. The first is the loudest, the leader. Behind him, lagging slightly, are 2 more. They are moving in a column, track in track, so as not to hit mines. Smart, experienced. The sound becomes physically unbearable. It seems that the ground under the self-propelled gun begins to tremble slightly. The clank of tracks no longer blends into a hum, but is heard distinctly. Clink, clink, clink. This is the metal of the tracks hitting the drive sprockets. 600 meters, whispers Ignatiev. Battle stations. Close hatches. The heavy hatch covers fall, cutting the crew off from the world. Inside, it instantly becomes stuffy and cramped. The darkness thickens. Now they orient themselves only by the sound penetrating through the armor and by the trembling of the hull. Sights 0, commands the lieutenant. Lead half a silhouette. Aim by sound. The gunner turns the flywheels. The turret does not rotate. He has to traverse the gun within a limited sector. The barrel, almost 5 meters long, creeps to the right, groping for the invisible target. The gunner's hands are wet. He wipes them on his coveralls, leaving oily smears. Fear exists, but it is driven deep inside, under the crust of professionalism. Fear is when you don't know what to do. But they know. Their task is to turn the kinetic energy of the shell into destruction. In the vision block, nothing. Black murk. But then, in this murk, something else begins to emerge. Not light, no. A change in the density of darkness. Vague, barely perceptible silhouettes, blacker than the night itself. They move, tearing the fabric of the fog. I see it, the gunner exhales. His voice breaks into a falsetto. 3 of them, moving with blackout lights. The Germans have turned on headlights with slit covers, narrow strips of light to see the road but not be noticed from the air. Arrogance. In the absolute darkness of the forest, these strips of light work like beacons. They scream, "We are here! Shoot here!" The distance is shrinking. 400 meters. 350. The roar of German engines now fills the entire space. It presses on the ears even through the headsets. It feels like the Panthers are driving right over their heads. Adrenaline hits the temples like hammers. The mouth goes so dry that the tongue feels like a piece of sandpaper. Ignatiev looks at the second hand of his watch, glowing in the dark. Time has slowed down. Every second stretches into eternity. He waits for the lead vehicle to expose its side, or at least its cheek. The frontal armor of a Panther is strong. A ricochet is possible even for their caliber. He needs the right angle. He needs the moment. "Wait," he says harshly, feeling the gunner is already ready to press the trigger. Nerves ring like taut strings. "Wait!" 300 meters. The silhouette of the lead tank grows in the vision block into a monstrous shadow. You can see the long barrel with the muzzle brake swaying in time with the movement. You can see the flat turret. The beast goes on a hunt, not knowing that it is already the prey. Inside the Su-152, it smells of sour fear and cold steel. 4 men have shrunk into a ball, merging with their machine. They do not breathe. Right now, there is no past, no future, no motherland, no Stalin. There is only the crosshair creeping across the armor of the enemy tank and the gunner's finger on the electric trigger. 200, whispers Ignatiev. The roar outside reaches a crescendo. It seems that the German track is about to crush their roof. The instinct of self-preservation screams, "Run!" But discipline holds the body in an iron grip. This is a duel of nerves. Who will flinch first? Who will make the first mistake? The Germans still don't see them. Masked by branches, motionless, cold. The self-propelled gun is for them just part of the forest, a hill, a bump. Ignatiev inhales the stale air of the casemate. Fire! The gunner's finger presses the electric trigger button. In that instant, the world ceases to exist in the usual categories of sound and light. The shot of a 152mm ML-20 gun howitzer in a night forest is not a pop. It is a rupture of reality. The muzzle brake, a massive piece of steel at the end of the barrel, takes the monstrous blow of powder gases, diverting them to the sides to dampen the recoil. But physics cannot be cheated. 45 tons of metal are tossed into the air like a child's toy. The self-propelled gun clangs with its entire being, rolling back and pressing its tracks into the yielding wood of the corduroy road. A supernova flash. For a split second, the forest, immersed in inky gloom, is illuminated by a blinding, surgically white light. The shadows of the trees dart in panic, elongating and breaking. In this instantaneous photograph of death, everything is visible. Every needle on the spruce, every bolt on the armor of the German tank, the driver's face frozen in a grimace of tension in the open hatch of the Panther. The shell, 53 BR 540, a blunt-nosed, armor-piercing slug weighing 48 kilograms and 800 grams, leaves the barrel at a speed of 600 meters per second. Distance, 200 meters. This is not a distance for ballistics. This is a point-blank shot. The shell has no time for trajectory drop. It flies on a string. Impact. This is not a penetration. German engineers prided themselves on the Panther's sloped armor, designed to ricochet shells of 76 or 85 millimeters. But here, different mathematics is at work. The mathematics of extreme kinetic energy. Almost 50 kilograms of hardened steel slam into the frontal plate of the German tank with the force of a speeding locomotive. The armor holds, but that doesn't save them. The impact energy is so monstrous that the welds burst like rotten threads. The turret ring, a complex mechanism of bearings and gear teeth, deforms instantly. The turret, weighing several tons, is simply torn from the hull. It flies into the air, tumbling like a knocked-off hat, and crashes onto the armor of the engine compartment with a roar, crushing the radiator grills. Inside the German tank, what happens is described in dry reports as irrecoverable loss of personnel. From the monstrous pressure drop caused by a kinetic strike of such force, the air turns into a shock wave. The crew dies instantly, without even realizing what happened. Their bodies, a minute ago the elite of the Panzerwaffe, turn into formless matter. No heroics, only solid-state physics and strength of materials. Darkness returns just as abruptly as it disappeared, but now it is different. It is dense, ringing, filled with purple spots swimming before the eyes. The crew of the Su-152 is blinded by their own flash. "Got him!" The gunner's scream drowns in the ringing ears. "He's done, the bitch! Did you see?
Shaved the turret right off."
Inside the fighting compartment, it is hell. The light bulb flickered and went out from the concussion. In the darkness, a heavy, hollow sound is heard, the spent brass casing falling to the floor. It is hot. Heat radiates from it like a stove. The smell of burnt gunpowder hits the nose, acrid, bitter, inducing coughing. The ventilator hums strainedly, trying to suck out the blue smoke, but its blades just stir the poisoned air. Ignatiev shakes his head, trying to shake off the stun. Before his eyes stands that frame, the decapitated silhouette of the panther in a halo of fire. This is the triumph of brute force over technology. The Zveroboy lived up to its nickname. It doesn't fence, it hits with a club. "Recoil normal," reports the gun commander, shouting over the noise in his head.
"Run out complete!"
The crew's emotions are an explosive mixture of a predator's delight at bringing down prey and animal terror from realizing their own vulnerability. They have just revealed themselves. The muzzle flash was visible for kilometers. Now every German in this forest knows where they are. "Back!" Ignatiev wheezes, his voice breaking. "Back it up, Misha! Get into the bushes!" The engine roars, spewing clouds of black smoke. The Su-152 jerks and begins to back up, breaking the undergrowth. The tracks screech, grinding branches and mud. They need to change position, even by 10 meters, just to get slightly off the line of fire. The two remaining in the darkness of the Panthers will now come to their senses. They are in shock. They lost their leader, but they are still deadly dangerous. The ringing of the heavy casing rolling on the ribbed floor of the casemate grates on the nerves. The loader kicks it aside, clearing space. His hands are shaking, but it's not fear. It's adrenaline tremors. "Load!" The command sounds like a sentence. "Armor piercing! Move it!" The race with death begins. A single-shot gun against the enemy's semi-automatic cannons. They have, maybe, 30 seconds before the Germans realize where death flew from and turn their turrets. 30 seconds to reload 50 kilograms of death. Ahead, where a second ago was a formidable German tank, a bonfire is now flaring up. Gasoline fumes ignited, and flames begin to lick the twisted metal. This fire is the only thing now illuminating the scene of the night battle. It snatches the silhouettes of the other two machines from the darkness. They have frozen. Their turrets begin to turn slowly, jerkily, looking for the offender. Their barrels grope in the dark like the blind fingers of a murderer. Ignatiev looks into the vision block. His eyes water from the fumes. His heart pounds somewhere in his throat. Round one is theirs. But the forest hides two more, and they are no longer careless hunters. They are wounded beasts cornered, which means they are doubly dangerous. "Come on, buddy, come on," whispers the loader, hugging the shell. Muscles on his back go taut like cables. The battle has just begun, and in this duel of calibers, a second chance rarely comes. The self-propelled gun, clanking its tracks, sharply backs up. The multi-ton machine retreats into the thick undergrowth, snapping young birches like matches. Inside the casemate, this maneuver feels like an earthquake. The crew is thrown from side to side. Shoulders hit the breech, knees hit the ammo rack. But there is no pain. There is only animal instinct. Hide. Dissolve into the darkness. Get off the line of return fire. "Halt!" yells Ignatiev when the stern hits something hard, possibly the trunk of an ancient oak. The machine freezes, and in the same second, the hell of reloading falls upon the crew. For an outside observer, a shot is a second. For the crew of the Su-152, It is the beginning of hard labor. The ML-20 gun has separate loading. This means there is no unitary cartridge like in a T-34 tank. The shell is separate, the charge in the casing is separate. To fire one shot, you have to manually shove nearly 80 kilograms of death into the breech. A blue fog stands in the fighting compartment. The electric fan on the roof of the casemate howls strainedly, trying to draw out the powder gases, but it is powerless. After a shot of 152 mm caliber, such a concentration of carbon monoxide and nitrogen oxide forms in the enclosed volume that the air becomes a poisonous jelly. It tears at the throat, burns out the mucous membrane of the nose, makes eyes water so much that nothing is visible. The loader, a healthy village guy with a broad back, rips off his headset. It gets in the way. Right now, hearing is not needed, but brute muscular force. He takes a deep breath, swallowing this poisonous mixture, and dives to the ammo rack on the left side. There, in the nests, they lie. Armor-piercing blunt-nosed shells, 53 BR 540. The weight of each is 48 kilograms and 800 grams, almost 100 pounds of cold, oiled steel. This is not a sack of grain that can be comfortably hoisted onto a shoulder. It is a smooth cylinder that strives to slip out of sweaty hands and shatter the bones of the foot. "Shell!" wheezes the loader. His voice is gone. He hugs the slug with both hands, pressing it to his chest like a child. Muscles on his back tighten under the sweat-soaked coveralls. It seems the fabric is about to burst. Veins on his neck swell like ropes. He lifts the weight from the floor with a jerk. The floor of the casemate is slippery with oil and casing soot. His legs slide apart. Maintaining balance in the semi-darkness, when the floor vibrates underfoot from the engine's work, is a task for an acrobat, not a soldier. A step. Another step. He approaches the breech. The breech operator has already opened the piston bolt. The black maw of the barrel waits. Heat wafts from there like from the furnace of the underworld. The loader places the nose of the shell on the tray. Now, the hardest part. It must be rammed home. Not just pushed, but driven with force into the rifling of the barrel so that the copper driving band cuts into the steel and seals the bore. If rammed weakly, there will be no shot, or the bolt won't close. He takes a special rammer, a wooden pole with a thickening at the end. And... hup! He exhales, putting the entire weight of his body into the strike. A dull thud of metal on metal. The shell goes into the barrel. This sound, heavy and solid, means half the job is done. But there is no time to rest. "Casing!" the loader commands himself. He no longer hears the commander's commands. He works automatically, like a wound-up mechanism. He turns to the right rack. Brass casings stand there. They are lighter but bulkier. Inside is the full variable charge, kilograms of gunpowder that in a minute will turn into fire and pressure. He grabs the casing by the flange, yanks it out of the nest. The brass rings. At this moment he sways to the side. His head spins. Carbon monoxide does its work. Oxygen starvation of the brain comes on unnoticed. Red circles float before the eyes. A warm trickle runs from the nose. A vessel burst from overexertion and pressure. He licks salty blood from his lip, spits black saliva on the floor. He cannot stop. Stopping is death. He drags the casing to the breech. His hands tremble. Not from fear, from extreme fatigue. Every movement that took a second in training now stretches out, requires an effort of will. The casing enters the chamber with a clang, following the shell. "Ready!" he screams, jumping aside to the wall of the casemate to avoid getting hit by the recoil. The breech operator slams the heavy wedge bolt shut with force. The click of the locking mechanism sounds like a pistol shot. It is the most welcome sound in battle. It means the cannon has become a weapon again, not a useless pipe. "Gun ready," reports the breech operator. Inside the self-propelled gun, the heat is like a sauna. The air temperature has risen to about 40 degrees. A wave of heat comes from the breech. The tankers' faces are black with soot. Only eyes and teeth stand out as white spots. Sweat flows in streams, stinging abrasions on the skin. The loader slides down the wall onto a toolbox. He needs half a minute to catch his breath. His chest heaves, sucking in poisoned air. His hands shake with a fine tremor. He looks at his palms. They are skinned to the blood against the metal, but he doesn't even feel it. The pain will come later, if they survive. But for now, he sits in this iron box filled with gases and waits. Waits for the next shot to get up again and lift those accursed 50 kilograms. Ignatiev doesn't look at the crew. He has no time for sympathy. He knows the men are at their limit, but he also knows the Germans have no limit. The Panthers are there in the forest, and they are looking for a target. "Wipe the sweat," he throws to the gunner, not looking up from the vision block. The gunner wipes his sleeve across his forehead, smearing the dirt. The hellish merry-go-round of loading is finished. Now it is the turn of nerves again. But the shadows in the forest have already changed position. The burning carcass of the destroyed panther no longer illuminates their position. It has become just a bright spot on the periphery, interfering with night vision. Now they need to orient themselves differently. "Prepare high explosive next," Ignatiev says dully. "If we miss with armor piercing, at least we'll tear the tracks with HE." The loader nods in the dark. The high explosive shell, 53 OF 540, weighs 43.5 kilograms, a little lighter. "A break," he grins bitterly to himself. Inside the Su-152, there is no place for heroism in the bookish sense. No one here thinks about lofty things. Here they think about how not to drop the casing, how not to pass out from the fumes, and how to manage to drive the shell into the barrel faster than a German slug punches through their front. It is hard, dirty, men's work. Work in hell. The forest, drowning in inky darkness a minute ago, has now turned into a theater of insane shadows. The destroyed panther burns as only 45 tons of steel filled with gasoline, oil, and explosives can burn. A pillar of flame, roaring like a blowtorch, shoots 10 meters up from the open turret ring, tearing the night cover. This fire changes the entire tactical geometry of the battle. Now it is not a blind hunt. It is a duel in a strobe light. The remaining 2 German crews are seized with panic. They don't see the enemy, but they see what happened to their commander. The instinct of self-preservation, multiplied by German discipline, dictates the only solution: suppress the threat with fire, at any cost, even without seeing the target. They orient themselves on the residual trail of the flash from Ignatiev's shot, on sound, on intuition. The long barrels of the 75mm KWK-42 guns begin to spew death. The rate of fire of the Panthers is high. Shells fly out every 6 to 8 seconds. Tracers stitch through the forest. In the night, they don't look like romantic lights, but like red-hot rebar rods that someone is hurling with force through the thicket. They fly with a shriek, ripping the air. Armor-piercing rounds follow. Shells shear off trees half a meter in diameter, turning trunks into splinters. Hell begins around the Su-152. The earth erupts in fountains of mud and roots. "Left! More left!" Ignatiev yells, pressing against the vision block. He isn't trying to hide. He is searching. The burning enemy tank has become a beacon for him, but not for navigation, for backlighting. Ignatiev understands. The Germans are darting about now. They are trying to get off the line of fire, backing up, turning their front toward the supposed threat. And in this chaos, they will inevitably cross the spot of light. Impact. The hull of the self-propelled gun shakes so hard the crew's teeth clatter. The sound is as if a blacksmith's hammer hit an empty bucket with you sitting inside. Ricochet. A German sub-caliber shell caught the cheek of the casemate, carved a deep groove in the 75mm armor, and, howling like a top, went into the sky. Scale rained down inside. It smelled of ozone and hot metal. "Alive?" The commander's voice barely breaks through the ringing in the ears. "Normal!" wheezes the mechanic, gripping the levers. "Didn't penetrate. Angle was sharp." Ignatiev instantly returns to observation. There is no fear. There is a cold statement of fact. The armor held. But next time, they might not be so lucky. The distance is laughable, 200 or 300 meters. At such a range, the Panther's gun punches through them. Only the night and the turn of the hull, which increased the effective armor thickness, saved them. And then he sees it. The second German tank, trying to escape into the shadow of the trees, makes a fatal mistake. It drives between the Su-152 and the bonfire that the first tank had turned into.
Against the background of the roaring flame, a clear, black, geometrically flawless silhouette appears. It is the physics of light and shadow. The German thinks he hid in the dark, but for Ignatiev, he is now a black hole against an orange hell. Everything is visible. Rotating road wheels, the slope of the front plate, the turret turned in search of a target. He is in the palm of their hand, like a target in a shooting gallery. "See the shadow!" Ignatiev screams to the gunner. "Against the fire! Second machine!" "I see it!" the gunner responds. His hands work quickly, feverishly, but accurately. Flywheels spin, sending the crosshair to the center of the black silhouette. Now there is no need to guess, no need to listen to the engine sound. They have visual contact. "Armor piercing! Hit under the turret! Under the rim!" commands the lieutenant. The enemy is still shooting. Tracers pass a meter above the roof of the casemate, knocking down branches that fall onto the armor. The Germans fire in a fan, trying to grope for the Soviet self-propelled gun in the bushes. They don't know that they themselves are already in the crosshairs. Inside the Su-152, time compresses again into a tight spring. The loader, having just rammed another 48-kilogram shell, slumps against the wall, gasping for air. His work is done. Now it's up to the gunner. The gunner catches the moment when the hull's oscillation stops. The black silhouette of the Panther creeps in the sight. It tries to leave in reverse, to hide behind the smokescreen drifting from its burning brother. Too late. "Fire!" The second shot of the ML-20 howitzer sounds like a verdict from a heavenly court. Again the monstrous jolt of recoil. Again everything is shrouded in smoke. But this time, the flash of the shot merges with the reflections of the fire. The shell covers the distance in a fraction of a second. It hits exactly where the gunner aimed, at the joint of the hull and turret, slightly below the gun mantlet. The result of a 152mm caliber hit on a tank full of ammo and fuel is not just a breakdown. It is annihilation. The armor-piercing slug smashes through the side, bursting into the fighting compartment. Kinetic energy converts to heat. Flash. The second Panther flares up not like a match, but like a barrel of gunpowder. The ammo explosion inside the machine tears the hull apart from the inside. Fire shoots out of all hatches in jets 5 meters long. The heavy turret is thrown up and shifted to the side as if it were cardboard.
The forest is lit by a new sun. Now 2 are burning. "Got the second one!" yells the gunner, and the hysteria of a victor is heard in his voice. "It's burning, the bastard! Burning like a candle!" Ignatiev does not celebrate. He looks at his watch. Only 6 minutes have passed since the beginning of the battle. 6 minutes, during which they destroyed 2 heavy tanks. But the mathematics of war is inexorable. 3 minus 2 equals 1. Somewhere out there, in the darting shadows, the third one remains. And right now, he is the most dangerous. He saw where death flew from for his comrades. He knows the position, and he is, most likely, already loaded. "Casing out!" Ignatiev commands, cutting off the crew's joy. "Misha, full reverse. We're changing position." The self-propelled gun, shrouded in smoke, begins to move again. The tracks tear the ground. They need to disappear, dissolve, become invisible. Because right now, not stray tracers, but aimed lead will fly in their direction. The third German is not a panicking rookie. If he survived the first minutes of this meat grinder, it means he knows how to wait. Around them, 2 bonfires burn. Shadows dance a wild dance on the trunks of pine trees. In this chaos of light, sound, and death, the crew of the Su-152 begins a new round of hide-and-seek, where the stake is life, and the loader is already reaching for the third shell, cursing the weight, the war, and this endless, accursed caliber. Smoke from the 2 burning torches veils the vision blocks with a greasy black shroud. In the casemate of the self-propelled gun, there is a stench that tears at the throat, but the crew no longer notices it. The body works on adrenaline remnants, burning internal reserves. The third German tank is left alone. Its commander is now in the most terrible situation imaginable in war. He is in a forest, at night, his platoon destroyed in 6 minutes by an invisible enemy possessing monstrous firepower. He doesn't know how many Russians are in the dark. A battery? A regiment? Or one insane crew? Panic is a bad advisor, and the German makes a mistake. Instead of freezing and merging with the darkness, he gives full reverse, trying to turn around and get out of this fiery bag. The roar of his engine at limit RPMs drowns out the crackle of burning metal. "Movement spotted!" screams the gunner, pressing his face into the forehead pad of the sight. "Right, by the edge! Turning around the bastard! Exposing his side!" Ignatiev instantly assesses the situation. The German is trying to perform a pivot turn, working the tracks in opposition. At this moment, he opens the most vulnerable place of any tank, the flank and the running gear. The armor is thinner there. There are no sloped sheets capable of deflecting a blow. "What's in the barrel?" Ignatiev yells, although he remembers the order perfectly well. "High explosive," responds the loader. He is sitting on the floor, hugging his knees with his hands. He has no strength to stand up anymore. In the barrel lies shell 53 OF-540. It is not an armor-piercing slug created to punch through steel. It is a steel cup, packed with almost 6 kilograms of TNT and RDX. The weight of the shell is 43.5 kilograms. This is a weapon not of a pinpoint prick, but of total destruction. Designed for demolishing concrete bunkers and destroying infantry in trenches, against armored vehicles it works on the principle of a sledgehammer. "Hit the running gear!" commands the lieutenant. "Plant it right under his rollers!" The self-propelled gun freezes for a second. Fine-tuning. Hold breath. Fire! The third shot in 12 minutes. The ML-20 gun howitzer spits out a ball of fire. The high-explosive shell flies slightly slower than the armor-piercing one, but at this distance, it doesn't matter. Impact. This time, there is no sound of metal hitting metal. There is the sound of a rupture that deafens everything living within a kilometer radius. The shell hits exactly in the running gear of the Panther, between the road wheels and the ground. The fuse activates instantly. 6 kilograms of explosives detonate in the confined space between the track and the tank's hull. A shockwave of monstrous force seeks an exit. It tears the track ribbon to shreds, turning massive links into shrapnel. It rips out road wheels along with torsion bars, hurling them into the forest. But the most terrible thing happens to the hull. The 45-ton machine receives a lateral blow of kinetic energy from the explosion of such power that the laws of gravity retreat temporarily. The Panther's high center of gravity plays a cruel joke on it. The tank lists. The blast wave throws its right side up. Slowly, as if in slow motion, the heavy German machine lifts off the ground. It falls onto its left side, then, having lost balance, with a crash that shakes the earth, flips onto its side. The turret, having lost support, scrapes its barrel against the ground, twisting it into a knot. The bottom of the tank, dirty, oily, defenseless, looks into the night sky. "It's down!" Disbelief rings in the gunner's voice. "We flipped it! Commander, we flipped it!" Silence falls in the forest. It doesn't come immediately. First, a thin, piercing ring stands in the ears, the consequence of concussion from their own shots. Then, through this ringing, a crackling begins to break through. It is the burning tanks crackling. It is metal bursting, cooling or overheating. It is somewhere inside the overturned third Panther where ammunition shells begin to explode. Dull, womb-like pops that make the carcass lying on its side shudder. Ignatiev leans back against the seat backrest. His coveralls are soaked through, wringable. His hands shake so much he can't unbutton his collar. He looks at his watch. 12 minutes. Only 12 minutes have passed since they heard the first sound of tracks. In 12 minutes, one crew, cut off from the world, deaf, blind, destroyed a platoon of elite German armor. 3 heavy tanks, almost 150 tons of enemy metal turned into scrap. This is not luck. This is caliber. 152 millimeters leaves no chances. It is a steel argument against which Krupp and Daimler-Benz found no objections. Someone begins to laugh in the casemate. Quietly at first, then louder. It is the loader. He laughs, looking at the black ceiling, and tears flow down his face, smearing the soot. This is not mirth. This is the release of tension that could have burst the heart. The driver mechanic, burying his forehead in the levers, is simply silent, his shoulders trembling. Ignatiev doesn't stop them. He understands. They just returned from the other world. They did their job. Heavy, dirty, terrible work. "Stand down," he says quietly, and this voice sounds louder than any shot. "Kill the motors. Air out the compartment." He rises with difficulty and pushes the commander's hatch. The heavy metal gives way. Night air rushes into the casemate, cold, fresh, mixed with the smell of burning and scorched meat. Ignatiev leans out to his waist. The picture before him is worthy of a realist battle painter's brush. 3 bonfires in the forest. 2 stand spewing flame into the sky. The third lies on its side, and smoke from it creeps along the ground. Around is churned up earth, broken trees, craters. This is their work. This is the mark of the Zveroboi. They won not because they were heroes, but because they had a predator's instinct, knowledge of their machine, and a shell weighing 100 pounds. Physics turned out to be on their side. Ignatiev takes out a cigarette case, but his fingers don't obey. He just looks at the fire and listens as the forest gradually reclaims its rights to silence. The night continues. Dawn comes not with sunbeams, but with a gray, sticky jelly. July fog, heavy with moisture, mixes with black, greasy smoke that still rises from the cooling skeletons of German equipment. The forest resembles a graveyard of ships washed ashore by a storm. The silence is such that the ringing in the ears seems a separate, independent sound. The hatch of the Su-152's commander's cupola is wide open. From it, as if from the mouth of an extinct volcano, blue fumes still drift. The loader climbs out first. He doesn't jump out. He tumbles out, clinging to the rungs with disobedient hands. His face is a black mask on which the whites of his eyes seem unnaturally bright, inflamed. He slides down the armor onto the track, then to the ground, and falls to his knees. He vomits black mucus. The body is trying to get rid of the products of gunpowder combustion that he breathed for the last half hour. The others crawl out after him. Lieutenant Ignatiev descends last. His legs are like cotton. They bounce as if he is walking on a mattress, not solid ground. His head hums as if a transformer is working inside. These are the consequences of pressure drops during firing and mild carbon monoxide poisoning. Ventilation in self-propelled guns is an eternal problem, and after 3 shots with such a caliber, the atmosphere inside becomes unfit for life. But they survived. They stand by their machine, swaying like drunks. 4 men in oily, dirty coveralls. No triumphant shouts, no hugs. The fatigue is such that there is no strength even to smoke. Ignatiev takes out a cigarette, crumples it with dirty fingers, but matches break one after another. The driver holds out a lighter to him, a trophy, German. The flame trembles.
Let's go take a look.
Ignatiev's voice is hoarse, croaking. He barely recognizes it himself. They walk across the clearing, boots squelching in mud mixed with oil and ash. It is a tour of the hell they created themselves. The first target is the Panther without a turret. In the morning light, the destruction looks even more terrible than at night. The turret, weighing almost 8 tons, lies 15 meters from the hull, half buried in the soft soil. The gun barrel is bent in an arc from hitting the ground. The tank hull itself represents an opened tin can. The turret ring, the very place where the turret attaches to the hull, is torn apart. The ring gear is ripped out by the roots. Ignatiev approaches the frontal armor. He sees the point of impact. It is not a neat hole left by a sub-caliber hole puncher. It is a jagged wound 20 centimeters in diameter. The edges of the armor are melted and turned inside out. Around the hole, the metal has cracked like broken glass. The kinetic strike of the 48-kilogram slug was of such force that the hull welds split along the sides. The tank simply burst at the seams, unable to withstand the overload. "Look, Commander," the gunner says hoarsely, pointing to the hole. "A head could fit through." And indeed, you can stick a head through the hole. Inside is blackness and the smell of death. The crew evaporated. Physics worked ruthlessly here. An instantaneous pressure jump turned people into biomass. They walk further. The second machine burned to the ground. The metal lost its temper from the high temperature, became gray, rough, covered with scale. The rubber rims on the road wheels burned away, leaving bare iron rims. The tracks sagged like dead snakes. There is nothing to look at here. Fire destroyed all traces, leaving only a skeleton. The third Panther lies on its side, demonstrating its vulnerable belly to the world. The high-explosive shell did its job. 3 road wheels are torn out, along with suspension elements. The side is dented inward half a meter. This is a graphic demonstration of what happens when 6 kilograms of explosives detonate right next to the running gear. The multi-ton behemoth looks pitiful. like an overturned beetle. Among the scattered debris, casings, boxes, pieces of tracks, Ignatiev notices a leather map case. It lies in the mud, miraculously intact, thrown out by the blast wave from the open hatch of the overturned tank. The lieutenant picks it up. German leather, high quality, solid. Inside is a map. Ignatiev unfolds it. The map is perfect. Typographical printing, clear contour lines. The forest drawn down to every ravine. Over the map are neat markings in colored pencils. Blue arrows indicate the route of movement. Dotted lines mark sectors of fire. Time of arrival at the line, time of attack. Everything is scheduled by the minute. German Ordnung, order. They foresaw everything. They accounted for topography, time of day, soil condition. They didn't account for only one thing: that in the bushes, on a god-forsaken forest road, would stand a dirty, rough, but absolutely deadly Soviet self-propelled gun with a crew that had nothing to lose. Ignatiev looks at these neat arrows and feels a strange emptiness. All this German technological prowess, their Carl Zeiss optics, their radios, their precise tactics, all of it crashed against the crude, primal force of a 152mm caliber. War is not chess. It is a street fight in an alley. And here, the winner is not the one with the prettier uniform or the more accurate map, but the one with the heavier brass knuckles and the thicker skull. He throws the map case back into the mud. He doesn't need it. His map is the forest, the corduroy road, and the site's vision block. They turn back to their machine. The Su-152 stands against the background of the forest, squat, angular, devoid of any elegance. It looks like a huge boulder hewn with an axe. The welds are rough, uneven. They were welded by teenagers and women in Ural factories in 3 shifts. The armor is not polished. It is rough. Scars are visible on the casemate, a long scratch from a ricochet that knocked the paint down to the metal. But in this ugliness, there is its own aesthetics, the aesthetics of absolute functionality. The massive knob of the muzzle brake looks into the sky. It is not an instrument of politics. It is an instrument of destruction. Ignatiev runs his hand over the armor of his Zveroboy. It is warm, almost hot. The machine breathes, cooling down after battle. "Alive, old girl," mutters the driver, stroking the track. In this gesture, there is more tenderness than in any letter home. They know. This pile of iron is the only thing separating them from oblivion. It saved their lives by taking the hit, and it took the lives of enemies by spitting out 3 pieces of steel. The fog begins to clear. Gray dawn gives way to a pale morning. Now the scale of destruction is visible. The clearing is plowed up as if giant plows passed here. Trees are broken at a height of 2 meters. Their white splinters glow in the semi-darkness like bones. The crew is silent. They have nothing to say to each other. Words have depreciated. They saw death at point-blank range. They created death with their own hands. Now that the adrenaline is gone, only emptiness and dull pain in the muscles remain. They are the manual laborers of war who finished their shift. A heavy, dirty night shift. Ignatiev looks to the east, where the sky is beginning to brighten. Their own are there. The front is there. New orders, new maps, new battles are there. But this night will remain here, in this forest, frozen in the twisted metal of German tanks. This is their monument. A monument to an unknown crew that simply didn't want to die. "Mount up," the lieutenant says quietly. "Need to fix the radio. Our guys will be pulling up soon." They slowly, forcing themselves, climb back into this steel coffin that has become their home and fortress. The war didn't end. It just took a break for breakfast. And this breakfast will taste of burning and iron. Communication returns not as a voice in headphones, but as vibration of the earth. At first, it seems it's the Germans again. Phantom pains of concussion make them flinch at every rustle. But the rhythm is different. It is not the measured, predatory clang of German Panthers going on the attack. It is the chaotic, straining roar of hundreds of engines rushing forward. The roar of an offensive. Ignatiev sits on the superstructure, legs dangling into the hatch. He smokes that very cigarette, miraculously obtained, shielding the flame with his palm, a reflex that can't be beaten out even in daylight.
Out of the forest, breaking bushes, flies the first Willys jeep. Behind it, engines roaring, crawl Studebakers with infantry, light T-70 tanks, nimble armored cars. This is the advance guard of a motorized rifle brigade. They are moving according to the very map lying in the mud by the tracks of the Zveroboy, only the arrows are now pointing in the opposite direction. The column begins to break. Drivers slam on the brakes, not by order, but out of surprise. Before them opens the panorama of the night slaughter. 3 heavy German tanks destroyed on a patch of 200 meters. Smoke from them rises vertically, mixing with the morning fog and exhaust of passing vehicles. A battalion commander jumps out of the Willys. A young, fit captain, tunic not yet soaked with sweat, a medal shining on his chest. He looks like an alien element in this kingdom of soot and burnt iron. He runs to the self-propelled gun, jumping over craters, and his face expresses a mixture of delight and disbelief. Following him, puffing and cursing, runs a signalman. He drags a heavy reel of telephone wire. The wire catches on roots and track fragments. The signalman doesn't look at the tanks, he looks at his feet. He has his own war, the war for the continuity of the line. This thin black wire is more important than anything right now. It sews the torn front back into a single hole. The captain runs up to the Su-152. He stops, looking at the crew. 4 men sitting on the armor look like miners after an accident in the shaft. There are no faces. There are black masks of soot and oil, on which only tear tracks washed by the wind and inflamed red eyes shine white. "Whose work?" yells the captain. He screams at the top of his lungs, trying to shout over the noise of the column. "Who held the defense here?" Ignatiev looks down at him. He hears the voice, but the meaning of the words reaches him with difficulty, fighting through the cotton in his ears. He slowly, lazily, points his thumb at himself and at the hatch beneath him. The captain shakes his head. He looks at the torn-off Panther turret lying in the bushes, looks at the tank flipped on its side, looks at the third, burned to the ground. Then back at the lone self-propelled gun with peeling paint and a scar from a ricochet on the casemate. "Where is the battery?" the infantry battalion commander persists. "Where is the regiment? Where did the artillery stand? You couldn't have picked them off alone." "We were alone." Ignatiev's voice sounds flat, without intonation, like stone hitting stone. "There was no connection. There was no order to retreat. So we stood." Infantrymen, jumping off trucks to stretch their legs, begin to surround the Zveroboy. Soldiers approach cautiously, like approaching a wild beast. They poke fingers into holes in the German armor, shake their heads. Whistles, swearing, admiring exclamations are heard. For them, this spectacle is an attraction, confirmation that Fritz can be beaten, and beaten hard. They see the result, but they don't understand the price. They don't know what it's like to sit in an iron box when the air turns into poison. They didn't hear the sound with which 48 kilograms of steel enter the breach. They didn't feel the animal terror when you are blind and the enemy is coming at you with headlights on. For the infantry, this is a victory. For the crew, it's just the end of a shift. The captain slaps his palm on the heated armor of the self-propelled gun. "You guys really gave it to them." He shakes his head, and the expression in his eyes changes. Bravado disappears. Respect appears, mixed with superstitious fear. 3 Panthers? In how long? 12 minutes, answers the gunner. He sits on the edge of the casemate, legs dangling, and watches indifferently as an infantryman tries to pry a piece of melted rubber off a German road wheel for a souvenir with a knife. Maybe 15. Don't have a watch. The signalman finally reaches the machine. He throws the reel into the mud, wipes sweat from his forehead. "Comrade Captain, we have a connection. HQ is on the line, demanding a situation report." The captain nods but doesn't leave. He is still trying to put the puzzle together in his head. How could one old, clumsy, self-propelled gun, devoid of a turret, grind up a platoon of the newest German machines? It contradicts tactics, manuals, logic. "You need to be decorated," he says seriously. "They'll give you hero stars, nothing less. I'll personally confirm the report. I saw it." Ignatiev grins. The grin comes out crooked. The crust of dried blood on his lip cracks. "Some pure alcohol would be nice, Captain," he says. "And 4 hours of sleep." "And those pieces of iron," he waves his hand toward the German corpses. "Let HQ count them." The dialogue doesn't stick. They speak different languages. Infantry lives by the rush, the attack, kilometers of ground covered. Self-propelled gunners live by the weight of the shell, seconds of reloading, and degrees of aiming. Between them lies an abyss of experienced experience. The infantrymen look at the tankers like gods of war descended from Olympus, and the gods of war want only one thing: for their spines to stop aching, and for someone to bring water. The column starts moving again. Trucks growl, spewing blue smoke. Soldiers in the back wave their hands, shouting something encouraging. A field kitchen drives by, and the smell of porridge for a second overpowers the smell of burning, making the crew's stomachs cramp in hunger spasms. The captain salutes Ignatiev, jumps into his willies, and speeds forward to where the cannonade is already heard. War doesn't wait. It rolls west, grinding people and equipment. The crew of the Su-152 remains in place. A vacuum forms around them again. But now it is not a vacuum of mortal danger, but a vacuum of devastation. The noise of engines fades, leaving them alone with the results of their work. The loader, who had been silent until now, suddenly raises his head. "What about communications?" he asks, looking at the signalman who is already winding his wire further. "When will they give us communications?" "We'll fix it ourselves," grumbles the radio man, picking at the broken antenna input with a screwdriver. "They have their tasks, we have ours." Ignatiev looks at the receding column. He isn't offended. He understands. The infantry will go further, occupy cities, liberate villages, receive flowers and smiles. And their lot is to crawl behind, drag their gun howitzers, and break the backs of those steel monsters that prove too tough for others. It is hard work, and someone has to do it. A sudden crackle in the headphones of the headset lying on the armor next to the hatch makes everyone flinch. Through the hiss and crackle, a distant, distorted voice breaks through. "Birch, I am center. Birch, answer. Over." Ignatiev takes the headset. His movements are slow, calm. Routine returns. "I am Birch," he speaks into the throat microphone. "I hear you. Task completed. Square cleared. Awaiting instructions." The war continues. The feat is over. The daily grind has begun. And this daily grind weighs 48 kilograms, 800 grams. Exactly as much as the next shell they have to load into the ammo rack.
Heroism in newspaper essays is beautiful poses and high words. Heroism in reality is when, after a deadly battle that still makes your knees shake, you don't fall asleep, but pick up a wrench and a soldering iron. Because war is a job, and absenteeism is not forgiven here. The euphoria of victory evaporates faster than gunpowder fumes.
Fatigue remains. Heavy, leaden fatigue that piles onto the shoulders, pressing to the ground. But there is no time to rest. The Su-152 is a temperamental machine requiring care. 3 shots with the main caliber are not just 3 pulls of the trigger. It is a colossal load on the recoil mechanisms, on the breech, on the entire structure. The signalman, cursing, fusses with the radio. There is no soldering iron. He has to heat the tip on a lighter, twist wires with his teeth, insulate with raw rubber. The work is delicate, nerve-wracking, and his hands are in oil and dirt. Every contact is one with a fight. An hour goes to reviving the 10. An hour of swearing, burned fingers, and eye strain. But the airwaves are needed like air. Without communications, the self-propelled gun is just a deaf tractor with a cannon. Then the hardest part begins, resupplying ammunition. A supply truck makes its way to the position, engine smoking. The truck sides are down.
In the bed are wooden crates, heavy, unwieldy. In them lies death, packaged in 48-kilogram units. The crew turns into loaders. No discounts for the fact that they just destroyed 3 tanks. Shells won't jump into the rack themselves. "Catch!" wheezes the truck driver, handing a crate onto the armor. The loader stands on the roof of the engine compartment. He receives the load. His back aches, muscles are clogged with lactic acid, but he pulls. Heave, regrip, lower into the hatch. Inside, the breech operator receives them, placing them in nests. Cramped, stuffy, stale air. This is back-breaking labor. Each shell needs to be cleaned of preservation grease. Sticky grease protecting steel from rust now seems like an enemy. It is wiped off with rags until hands become black and slippery. Casings with charges require caution. Hit the primer, it will blow up the whole machine along with the crew and the supply truck. Work proceeds in silence. Only heavy breathing, the knock of wood on metal, and short commands. "Got it! Go! Ready!" It is a conveyor belt, mechanical, monotonous, killing the remaining strength. They load 20 rounds, almost a ton of cargo carried in the arms of 4 exhausted men. In parallel, the driver-mechanic checks the running gear. He crawls in the mud under the belly, feeling the road wheels, checking track tension. The tracks are clogged with earth and branches. They need to be cleaned with a crowbar, knocking out compressed clay. Otherwise, at the most crucial moment, the track will come off, and the Zveroboy will become an immobile target. He swears, skinning his hands to blood, tightening loosened bolts. Another hour passes. An hour stolen from sleep, from food, from life. Finally, everything is finished. Hatches are buttoned, but not all the way, to air out. The radio hisses quietly with background noise. The crew sits on the armor, chewing dry rations. Rusks seem wooden, canned meat tasteless. They eat mechanically, simply throwing fuel into the organism's furnace. The order comes by radio, the dry, laconic voice of a staff officer who doesn't care about their fatigue. "Birch, I am center. Task, advance to square 4712. Landmark, highway to Lvov. Support the offensive of the 103rd Tank Brigade. Do not lose tempo. How copy?" "Copy that, center," Ignatiev answers. "Moving out." Lvov. That means west. That means battle again.
No rest in the rear, no awards citations right now, no thank you from command. They did their job well, they proved effective, which means they will be thrown into the very heat again. The logic of war is simple. A working tool must work until completely worn out. Ignatiev looks at his men. "Stations," he says quietly. They stub out cigarette butts on the armor. Slowly, groaning like old men, they climb back into their iron box. Inside it smells of burning just the same. But now the smell of fresh oil and sweat is mixed in. This is the smell of readiness. The V2K engine wakes up with a disgruntled growl. Exhaust pipes throw out a cloud of blue smoke, which is immediately carried away by the wind. The multi-ton machine shudders, clanks tracks, and begins to turn. They drive past their night's work. 3 destroyed German tanks have already become part of the landscape. They no longer evoke emotions. It is just scrap metal. A past stage. The fire on them has almost gone out. Only smoke and the smell of burnt rubber remain. The Su-152 crawls out onto the corduroy road, grinding logs, and picks up speed. The driver-mechanic shifts gears. The engine switches to an even, powerful hum. The speed is low, 20, maybe 25 kilometers per hour. But this inertia cannot be stopped. They drive to meet the sun, which is already high. Ahead is the dust of roads, new ambushes, new duels, and new deaths. But they don't think about that. They think about the fact that something is knocking in the clutch, that water in the canteens is left for half a day, and that it would be good to sleep at least half an hour on the march, leaning a forehead against the vision block. There is no pathos in this, no feeling of the grandeur of the moment. There is only an endless, dirty, heavy road to the west. They are the manual laborers of war, and their shift has not yet ended. The conveyor of victory demands new blood and new iron, and they drive to deliver both to the destination. The machine disappears around the bend, leaving a trail of dust behind it. The forest, which was a witness to their triumph, remains behind, indifferent and quiet. History has already forgotten this night, because ahead are thousands of such nights. Ignatiev adjusts his headset, checking the connection. "Course 270, he commands.
Full speed ahead.
The road is reflected in the vision blocks. The road to Berlin, to which there are still thousands of kilometers of mud, fear, and the work of a 152mm caliber. Years pass. Decades. The dust of frontline roads has long settled, washed away by rains and time. Craters in the forest near Zolochiv have overgrown with grass and young undergrowth, hiding the earth's scars. Rusty skeletons of panthers were likely dragged away for scrap by locals or sappers long ago, melting the weapons of murder into plows and rebar for new houses. 1965. A heavy machinery design bureau somewhere in the Urals. An elderly man stands at a wide drafting table. He wears a gray suit that fits baggily, tie slightly askew. His hair is silvered with gray, but the haircut is the same, short, almost military. This is Ignatiev, former lieutenant, former commander of a Zveroboy, and now a lead engineer. It is quiet in the office. Only the rustle of drawing paper and the scratch of a pencil are heard. Outside the window is peaceful life. Trams hum, children laugh walking from school. But Ignatiev sometimes freezes, looking at the drawing. His hands, roughened, with the memory of fuel oil eaten into the pores of the skin, hold the pencil firmly. But sometimes fingers involuntarily clench, as if looking for the throat microphone button. He doesn't like to talk about the war. When colleagues invite him to solemn meetings, he excuses himself with work or health.
He doesn't wear medals on his jacket every day. They lie in a box in the bottom drawer of the dresser, wrapped in a clean cloth. For him, war is not parades and not loud speeches from tribunes. For him, war is a smell. The smell of burnt metal, unwashed bodies, and the sweetish, sickening smell of decomposition. It is a sound. The clang of a bolt, the ring of a casing, and the endless, crushing hum of a diesel. And, mainly, it is darkness.
Sometimes, waking up at night in his apartment, he doesn't immediately understand where he is. The silence of the bedroom seems to him that very ominous silence of the forest near Zolochiv. He lies with open eyes, peering into the ceiling, and waits. Waits for the sound of tracks. It seems to him that the walls are shrinking, turning into armor plates of the Su-152 casemate. The air becomes stale, heavy. His heart begins to beat in the rhythm of the V2K engine pistons. In these moments, he is there again. Young, angry, cornered. He feels that vibration of the floor under his feet again. He hears the breathing of his crew again. Where are they now? Did Misha, the driver, drink himself to death after the war, or become a tractor driver? The loader, that big guy, did he return to his village? Connections between them broke, like back then in the forest. Only memory remains. Ignatiev gets up, goes to the kitchen, pours water. His hands shake. This is not old age. This is the echo of the recoil of a 152mm gun that remained in his bones forever. He remembers that night not as a feat. He remembers it as work. Heavy, dirty, deadly dangerous work that had to be done. The Germans then were confident in their superiority. They had the best optics in the world. They had verified maps. They had tactics. They thought the night belonged to them. They thought Russians in their crude machines were blind and helpless. But the Germans were wrong. They didn't account for one factor not written in technical specifications, the factor of human fury multiplied by professionalism. Ignatiev and his guys didn't see with eyes. They saw with nerves. They saw with hatred. They created their own navigation in that hell, orienting by flashes and sound. It was vision of a different order, the vision of a predator defending its burrow. In a city park, on a pedestal, stands an Su-152. It was brought here recently, painted an unnaturally bright, festive green color. White rims were painted on the road wheels, which never existed at the front. The gun barrel is welded shut, hatches welded tight. Now it is a monument. During the day, children run around it. They climb onto the frontal armor, hang on the barrel, bang sticks on the wheels. For them, it is just a big, interesting toy. A tank. They don't know the difference between a tank and a self-propelled gun. They don't care. Adults walk past, sliding indifferent glances over the plaque with tactical and technical characteristics. Caliber 152mm. Weight 45.5 tons. Numbers. Dry, lifeless numbers. None of them know what it's like to be inside. No one feels that cold coming from the armor in winter, and that hellish heat in summer, when metal heats up so much it leaves burns. No one knows how it smells inside of fear mixed with diesel fuel. No one knows what the impact of an enemy shell on the frontal plate sounds like, a sound from which eardrums burst and the soul drops to the heels. Ignatiev sometimes comes here. He stands aside, leaning on a cane. He looks at the machine not as a monument, but as an old comrade in arms. He sees not the fresh paint, but those scars hidden under it. He remembers every rivet, every weld seam.
He knows that if he could open the hatch and climb inside, he would find his place there. His hands would naturally fall on the flywheels, legs would find the pedals. This machine is dead. Its heart, the engine, is removed or rotted. Its voice, the gun, is silenced forever. But while Ignatiev is alive, while people like him are alive, this pile of metal has a soul. True vision, thinks the old engineer, watching the playing children, is not diopters and not coated optics. True vision is understanding what you are pulling the trigger for. Back then, in '44, they didn't just destroy German tanks. They broke the back of the very idea that we could be defeated by technology. They proved that brute force, guided by unbending will, is capable of grinding up any Krupp, any Zeiss, any Maybach. The Zveroboy was a tool, scary, clumsy, but absolute in its effectiveness. It was a sledgehammer in the hands of the proletariat, needed to smash the complex clockwork mechanism of fascism. And they smashed it. Ignatiev turns and slowly walks away down the alley. The wind stirs the foliage, and in this noise he again hears the distant echo of a shot. But now it doesn't scare him. Memory is a strange thing. It smooths corners, erases pain, leaving only the essence. And the essence is simple. They stood their ground. In the dark, in isolation, in the minority, they didn't let them pass.
And while this monument stands, while at least one boy touches the cold steel of the track with reverence, that night hunt continues. Only now, it is a hunt for memory. A battle so that no one forgets at what price this silence in the park, this peaceful hum of the city, and this sky overhead were bought. The war is over, but the echo of the 152mm caliber will sound forever. In history textbooks, in museum halls, and in the silence of sleepless nights of those who survived. Ignatiev leaves, dissolving into the crowd of peaceful people whom he protected that night. He is invisible, one of millions. But in his eyes, if you look closely, you can still see the reflection of that very flash. The flash of a supernova that once illuminated a dark forest near Zolochiv and showed the enemy what true anger is.